Recently, I've been realizing the importance of having a clear and organized space because whenever I come down to the studio, I have this overwhelming urge to do everything at once, and it's largely because there's all kinds of stuff just scattered everywhere. Like I have this little crystal pyramid that is sitting right next to this camera lens, a really tiny camera lens, and it makes me want to do everything at once. And that's great to have that ambition, but when it's all really disorganized and not cleaned up, and granted, I'm making a really epic upgrade to the studio really soon, so it's kind of expected for it to be in chaos. But my state of mind when I walk in here to having that clarity of what to do has just been really overwhelming lately, and I'm really excited to have the studio be clean again. Timothy, thank you for being on the show today. How are you?
Hey, Brett, thanks for organizing it. I'm feeling well.
That's fantastic. So today on the Visionary Art Podcast, we have Timothy Bridge, who is an entrepreneur and an artist who is focusing on the business aspect of things and creating structures and offers that allow us to present the best of our ability to the world in a way that is marketable and makes sense. So Timothy, what are you getting pumped about these days? What are you excited for?
Yeah, I like that question. I think the thing that I'm most excited about right now is opportunity. I've been doing a lot of work changing up the ways that I think about occupying my time, and how to really make use of it in a way that I get to create by choice, versus say like over a year ago during the pandemic. I had a lot less ambition towards, say, like developing my own business practice per se. Like I was working as a massage therapist and pretty low maintenance in terms of like what was required of me. You know, I showed up, I performed my service, and then went home. Didn't have to think about the business aspects. But since the pandemic, I've endeavored to figure out, and I wanted to, for myself, learn how I could do work from wherever if I wanted to, but be able to work from home during this time. Also, I wanted to help other people learn how to do that because I thought that would be a useful bit of my time, a way to really like a problem to solve. So I'm excited about getting to actually put into motion these different teachings and mindset shifts that I've taken on for myself, just in like the way that I go about the world. Like, how is it that I look at things, and then for any bit that I can impart to others, like how can I help other people start to transform the way that they think about their service and their offerings, and how can we all live in a more abundant life, and have greater impact spanning beyond like one of the big things that's really guided me is like, how do we get out of those kind of survivalistic mechanisms of I have to figure out how to get enough money for food, or just get enough food, or maintain shelter, and like very necessity. But the more that we can have security there in our foundation, the more that we can start looking at bigger problems like, oh yeah, people around the world who don't have access to clean drinking water and food and shelter themselves. Like, if we're stuck trying to take care of ourselves in that survivalistic kind of state, not really too much resources that we can offer to these other problems of the world. And no shame about where we're at, but I think that it's a worthwhile use of my time to try to figure out the systems and what all is required to be able for myself get to a place where that foundation is taken care of, and then to be able to help others with that. That's something that I'm pretty excited about right now.
Yeah, you hit on 2 points in that I'm really interested to talk about. because I work from home as well. I've been doing this for like 3 years, and yeah, like you said, when you come home from like doing massage work, and then uh, you're in your home space, it's like the business is over there. It's it's not there anymore. Versus like when you're working from home, it's like the work environment is always here. We're always in that work mindset. I'm curious to ask, when you began working from home, how did you kind of separate that feeling of work, of like your workspace versus like your home relaxing space?
Mm-hmm. I'm really fortunate in the sense that I have this extra room to dedicate to work time. So that way it doesn't bleed into, like, it's not connected to my like sleeping area, or where I might go do like my, out in the living room, where it's like I might do like stretches or something else. Like it's separated in that sense. So I have like the physical barrier.
Yeah.
To box up and say, like, okay, if I'm in there, I'm doing work. If I'm not in there, it kind of, and somebody just recently I was talking with, they reminded me the Buddhist word retreat is about like disconnecting from, like, I'm about to go to an event in the middle of June, and just less than a month from now, and spend 10 days, and it's like, to me, it's almost like mind-boggling that I'm going to disconnect from where I've been so focused on all these projects and creation. But it's something that my being really calls for, is like, yeah, take that time to disconnect, like physically leave the location, and come back with fresh eyes. And
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I find that sometimes when I get out of the house to go and do something entertaining, something interesting, that can oftentimes be more productive than actually spending time in the studio, like trying to finish something. Because getting out there, we have that sense of like perspective. We can observe our lives and who we are from a little bit of distance, and having that big picture kind of feel will the things that are most important to us will kind of rise up when we're far away from that. Tell me about this retreat. Is what kind of retreat did you say it is?
well, that's just the use of. There's actually a therapist that I was talking with, and I was telling him about the event that I'm going to, and he told me about just that Buddhist word of retreat, which I think gets used a lot of times if you're going on a retreat. But I'm going to a music festival called Fireflies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a specific kind of retreat. Being in an environment with other creative people who are like-minded to your own ideologies, that feeling of connection to our tribe, to the specific types of people that we really resonate with, who are doing similar work to us, can be profoundly impactful to our growth. That's really exciting for me to hear that you're going to be part of that. And it's exciting that we get to go to festivals again and like start participating in these like enormous gatherings that provide something so uniquely amazing for our not just spirituality, but also like our practice, connecting with other people and learning what's working for them, getting to share our past experiences, and getting to create a whole new present experience, I think is a really wonderful thing. So that's really, really exciting to hear. I want to go back to what you were talking about in survival mode, whereas I was listening to a podcast before this, and they were talking about how people who are selling art, like buying others' art and then reselling it in order to make money, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, if it's just to make money, because it should be about the art itself and creating something that's really profound and transcending to look at. But yet the thing that supports our practice of making art is being able to sell it. Like, we need to make money in order to meet the bills, and if we're doing something that isn't our art, then that's going to take that time away from the art itself. So I'm wondering if there's any specific advice that you would give to someone who is very stressed for money. They're a very talented creator or artist of some sort. They have an insane amount of talent, and they need to make money like immediately. Like, what kind of advice would you give to them to escape that feeling of survival mode and jump into a place where they're creating the abundance that they need and that they also deserve for all the work they put into their art?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I'd say from personal experience, that's a tough one, just with the way that the emotions can come about, that sense of fear that we might not have enough to take care of ourselves. But I think if there was anything that I could share about just like my own journey and what I've taken and gaining, and like the ways that I think about operating, is to learn the rules of the game, like what game we're really playing. If the rules and I think we all make our own rules, but in some sense. So if somebody's not interested in, the money topic is a big one that I really appreciate getting into. I've seen some different paradigms viewed about making money, and something that I've learned to get past is just like redefining my relationship with it, with what I think of as money. I think there's a lot of things that people could do. It depends on what I think they're uniquely suited to do, what opportunities they have. It might be not doing the art for money necessarily. They might need say like an employment job, or to try to do something else that, if they don't have the systems in place to generate the income that they want for their survival needs. I think that is part of the game, though, is unless we're off grid or living in a communal setting where baseline needs are being able to be taken care of in another way. That's just, I think, a system that a lot of us operate in, is using money to exchange for goods and services. So, I think the more that we can actually learn the rules of the games of money and how to make money, save money, and utilize money to work with and work for us, the more that we can step out of. Because I love the idea that people get to do what they love, and it doesn't have to be connected to, like, so often I think it's like, oh, I love doing this thing, and it's like, oh, you should make that your work and your profession, and like that's like, I love that idea that like people, I think, deserve to be able to love what they do, but I think we also have to think about the economics of what kinds of problem is it solving. How equipped is somebody able to take something that they're passionate about and turn it into a business? Because that's something that we talked about too, is like, just because you're a great crafter at something, that doesn't mean that that's your business. Like, the business is like completely different, with like a sales process and doing the marketing and having the monetary generation come through a system, versus the craft, which can be plugged into that system. So I'd say it really depends on where somebody's at, where if they understand systems and they can take that thing that they're passionate about and plug it into the system and have it generating money, like, awesome, grind and do it. But if it's something that system of making the money isn't really understood, if it's going to be too big of a hurdle to overcome initially while still trying to get those baseline necessities, food, shelter, just figure out what it is that you're like is able to be done. If it's taking on a job somewhere, or that's probably, I think, the baseline is utilizing somebody else's flow that has the economic model working for them, and just plug into that.
Right. looking on Craigslist for various gigs that you could take on and make a couple $100 in a week. I've done that before. It doesn't always work. There's a lot of effort that's involved, but yeah, something that I think creatives should look out for when they are looking to make a full-time career out of their passions is that the pursuit of this passion is not such a struggle that it sucks all of the passion out of the thing that you're creating that other people like. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking from my own personal experience from when I went full-time and found myself in a very challenging situation very quickly. And it's really important to make sure that we do have those systems in place where we can provide value to the people who are paying attention to us and to the people that are in our lives. And it also kind of comes down to network because having that consistency of income is going to really depend on who we have within our network and who can we contact that we've worked for in the past that would be interested in supporting us again in the present and utilizing our evolved skills for one thing or another, whether it's a commissioned painting or building a website or building some kind of media platform. I think having that network is one of the essential ingredients towards creating that foundation of safety, so to speak, of financial security. So I see that you are always exploring other like media platforms for various networking and connections. I know that you use Facebook. Are there any other platforms that you use frequently that you would recommend to people to check out or look into?
On that note, I think it's most important. I haven't had offers that I'm trying to launch currently. So if I was in a content production mode, it would depend on what kind of offer, if it's artwork, if it's a service that I'm trying to offer, as a creative, say if I was trying to make video animations for somebody, or I'd say it always comes down to who the audience is that is trying to be reached. If there's a certain age group, like if I'm trying to reach the youngest of audiences like Snapchat or TikTok, or if a little older, into Instagram. And then it seems like Facebook has a range, but like it's got older demographics, and then LinkedIn for professional, like more corporate suited, although it seems like more and more people are getting onto LinkedIn. So it might expand outward, but I say just like always checking what the demographics are and understanding what goals are trying to be achieved. If it's just like recognition and like getting views, just look at where people are currently, and then if there's something more specific, just looking into if it's age or whatever demographic it is it's trying to be reached, just looking into, because I'm pretty sure all that information can be found just by searching.
I keep hearing that in one example, Twitter is supposed to be really good for networking with the NFT community, but I'm very aware that it takes a lot of effort to build momentum on a particular platform. It's taken me years to get my Instagram account to a point where my posts are seen by like a satisfying number of people. Do you use LinkedIn at all?
I've only just set up my account recently. I don't actively use it. I'm doing more so my back end work before, because it's like if I'm trying to use one of those networks, it's that consistency of making contact, really being engaged, and like I don't have the energy to do that right now. I'm working on my back end of offer creation and just like upping my knowledge skill set, or my knowledge set of just like what it is that I'm understanding, and trying to figure out like where does I want to go before just like trying to really establish myself on any network in particular.
I feel you. Gary Vee speaks really passionately about LinkedIn these days, so I'm always curious to talk to people who've had success on that platform or any other platform for that matter, because it's really totally possible to get a substantial amount of more attention on something that we're creating or that we're offering to the world on a separate platform than what we are used to using. When we're creating good content that we're really pumped about, and just from my own experience, I'm spending sometimes hours, even days, on one video or one piece of content. It can be really potent to share it in a place where it's seen by a different audience than what would normally be accessible to me on, say, Facebook or Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really interesting. So let's talk about offer creation. What is there like a formula that I can follow to like create the perfect landing page on my website? Because I've looked into this in the past, and it's like I do a lot of stuff. It's hard for me to narrow it down towards like just one offer, one deal. What would you recommend to artists who want to funnel people into a specific action on their website?
Nice. I'm going to see if I can blend, because there was one that to mention just on that last about platforms too, is like email is a huge one that didn't get mentioned there. And then to tie that to the landing page, I think from anything that I've studied, it's like simpler is better. Giving people clear calls to action. Like it's like, here's what I do, here's who I do it for, here's how you can take part, here's a quote, or here's how you can call, like schedule an appointment or get a, just further action, because and I understand it like theoretically, and for myself, like I don't want to spend a lot of effort if it's too confusing to try to understand what's going on here. It's like, okay, I'm probably gonna move on, unless it's like, I need to understand what's happening. So I'd say like understanding how to do that. And there's who's it, Donald Miller, who does building a story brand, is great about teaching about how to position yourself or oneself as you're helping these people who are the heroes of their own journeys on their quests, and you're positioning yourself as a guide to help them. So as like an artist, just understanding what problem it is that you're solving for these heroes. If it's entertainment, Just know how to position yourself so that it's not confusing, giving too many branches that like I kind of do this and that and this and that. It's like, hey, I entertain, or I make really cool visual effects, or however it is that you serve the community. Just be like really upfront about it. Let people know what you do, and give them an option to connect. And I think the way that I like looking at it is like a game. How can you make a web, like a sticky web, for people to be like, ooh, that's really fascinating, and like all these different points that people can connect and dive deeper down into your network, and into your world and your environment. But I think as long as always like keeping in mind that you're just helping these heroes on their journeys, and you're solving problems for them, and you're helping them solve their big problems and like take the next step on their quest. That's what's going to compel somebody to want to take part. Because otherwise it's like, oh, I do all these cool things, I do this and that and this and that, and they're like, yeah, but does it help me? Like, does it help? Because it's like everybody's, we're selfish beings. We're all trying to meet our needs. Even in nonviolent communication, it's taught like even when you're doing something for somebody else, it's because you have a need that you're trying to meet, like a need for contribution, or a need to feel significant. Whatever it is, we're trying to meet some internal need. So if you can keep that in mind, that even if you think you're doing something really cool, people are only going to engage because they think that it's going to benefit them in some way, social credit, or entertainment or something.
I love that. I love that perspective because it drives home something that I actually experienced on a psychedelic journey, was where I realized that everybody just wants to provide value in some way. Like all of us just want to contribute to the greater good of our community and of our networks, and that's what we're really aiming to do. And pretty much all that we do, even if we're doing horrible things like stealing from other people, it's because we want to be able to provide within our own circles. And the exact same thing goes for creating content, and like you were saying, create an offer, just figure out how it can help other people. I really love that. Would you have any recommendations or suggestions to someone in like how they can figure out what exactly it is that they can offer best? Like, is it a cross? My thought is that it's a cross between what we're good at and what we want to see in the world. I feel like there's another component that I'm missing there that, can tie into this situation to kind of give us a really clear direction for where we should go when we're figuring out exactly what it is that we want to create and that we want to provide for other people.
Yeah, let me pull up really quick. There's this Japanese concept. It's called ikigai.
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, it's got the two things that you just mentioned. It's so what you love, what the world needs, what can you be paid for, and what are you good at? And fusing all of that together. That's a cool.
I actually saw a segment on Cosm that was all about that, and how to find our own personal journey that aligns with all the unique aspects of us and ourselves and what it is that we want to see different in the world. What fascinates me endlessly is that all of us have the potential to do something that will dramatically shift the world. Like every single one of us has that potential. And the difference between those who do it and those who don't is that those who do it are ruthlessly making decisions to get to a place where they are capable of providing that. And they are expressing their vision clearly enough that it gets enough other people on board who want to work with them and create these things and bring these things into reality. And no matter where we're at in the present moment, there is always a path there to doing that incredible thing. And that to me is really, really inspiring. That's something that exists. We have that option to make those decisions. It's just creating a roadmap that goes towards creating those specific things.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, we have to kind of understand. We have to understand ourselves, who we are, and also understand our audience and who we're speaking for.
Yeah. There's a guy. His name is Roger James Hamilton. He's the founder of Entrepreneurs Institute and Genius U, and among others. He's actually I got introduced to the Ikigai probably secondarily. I've probably heard of it before, but just recently it came back into my life. And he and his team, they created a profiling test. It's called it's the same test, but it's either wealth dynamics or talent dynamics. And it's based off the I Ching and these seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, along with Chinese energy of wood. I guess it's fire. It's earth and steel, and there's these different ways that we naturally flow. We naturally have a lot of energy towards. Like me, I've got a lot of springtime energy. It's called dynamo or creator energy, and you can see these different people like Richard Branson, or Steve Jobs, Elon Musk apparently is also in that category of people who have these ideas. Lots of newness, innovation, and it's just like for me that's helped when I and it's not to box oneself in. It's just about to understand where our natural proclivity is to, like, oh, I this is where I naturally flow, have a lot of energy towards. Some people are maybe more in the winter, like steel systems. They're introverted. They don't work well with people. Like, you wouldn't want to put them in the sales position talking with people, where that's like a summer times blaze energy is how they describe it. And so when you just when you understand yourself better, like you said, and you know, like, what your natural, I wouldn't even say like natural skills, because I think you can learn skills, but just where your natural flow is. You can find out where it is that you might want to hone your skills and what areas of life. Like for me, like I'm like, oh, I make a really great strategist. Like I can talk about ideas and offer creations and connecting dots that others might not see. But like, I don't do things like really well that are very like detail oriented or like down to earth. And it's okay. Like I used to kick myself about like, oh, I'm supposed to be able to do everything like really well. And like, I think there is like skill to balancing oneself, but like also just knowing where it is that you flow naturally, like easiest and best. You can capitalize on it. That's stuff that actually comes naturally. And that's not like, it's like when time flies by versus like I was talking with somebody earlier today and like looking at financial statements, and I was like, oh yeah, that stuff is like not really like, it's important and like really important, but I just know where, like, I know where my natural flow is and like where I can spark off ideas a lot. And some people like they get their kicks talking about financial statements and like doing the accounting, and you know, that's where they know that they can spend a lot of their time easily. So I think if everybody knows what it is that they're naturally inclined towards, that can just benefit them so that they can do these things with more ease, versus like trying to make it this like uphill climb where it's like, oh, I have to do these things and it has to be a challenge and it has to be a struggle, when it's like there's a time and a place, I think, for challenging ourselves. But like, I think the more that we can like become intelligent as to like, oh, this is just my natural inclination, and like I partner with other people really well who excel in those other areas, that just helps, I think, to create more ease and more abundance for everybody. When we're not struggling so much, we just do these things that we naturally excel at.
For sure. I've heard stories of some artists say that like when they partnered with someone who works as like a salesperson for them, that the amount of artwork that they were able to output just was exponentially greater, because they weren't focusing on the more difficult tasks of selling ourselves. I will say that financial statements are really fun when there's really large numbers in the positive on them. That is fun for me. It doesn't discount the importance of them at all times, because those are kind of the limitations that we have to work within, and then we have to budget our business decisions around. Because especially when I'm making like, you know, art prints or making orders for more art, I have to work with ultimately what I have, and it can be quite a challenge sometimes to kind of make the decision of like what gets to be made versus what am I gonna have to like hold off on. It can be a very challenging decision at times. So I have a question. I think we talked about this a little bit before, but how do we stay dedicated to a project after the spicy initial excitement dies down? Like, because I always get really excited about my own personal business endeavors, but there often comes a time where, like, after that initial rush of like, this thing is new, yeah, after that kind of dies down a little bit, it can be difficult to stay motivated, and I'll end up finding myself easily distracted. I'm wondering if you have any insights or experience in keeping that dedication alive and keeping the ball rolling, so to speak?
I'm probably a terrible person to ask that question to. I've got bookmarks in like every single one of those books. I'm like new. Well, not just because it's new, but it's just like, I think to me, and again, this falls back onto like that natural kind of energetic flow that I'm at. Like, I am all about the new, like the Chinese energy that I associate myself most with is wood, of this growth and development. So, but in terms of like taking projects through to creation, if it was all on my shoulders, like that would be important for me to develop more of. And I do in certain areas, like allow myself to complete it. I think probably what could be the most important is like mapping out a grand vision of like, where is it that you're trying to go? Who is it that you're trying to be? And because if you're somebody who's like, I run a successful art empire, or I just provide for myself enough that I have like a steady home base and things like that, and you're not there yet, you have to ask yourself, who are you being? Are you being somebody who's going to be able to make that happen, or are you doing the things that are proving to yourself, consciously, subconsciously, that you're not being that kind of person who can create the foundation? So, because I've gone through that myself about like, it's supposed to, if I start something, I have to finish it all the way through. But me personally, actually, like, that's not necessarily what's important to me. What's important for me is like making sure I'm getting something beneficial. Like if I was like a prospector searching for gold, or, for me, it's crystals. Let's see a couple. I don't have to like search everything and like make sure that I, it's like, oh, cool, I found something cool. Like, sweet, I'm gonna take that home with me. It's about like what I set for myself in terms of, like what are my goals?
That practice that we get from those projects that we end up not finishing is also really essential, because it shows us, what we're really passionate about, what we have a lot of excitement towards. And I think that is important, but I always find myself not letting myself start on new projects until I finish one. Because it's like anytime that we start on something, we're kind of making an investment of our time and our energy into it. And there are times where I just feel like I'm too scattered in terms of my focus, and narrowing it down can be very, very difficult. And that happens a lot with the business side of things in my work, and setting up a shop and doing all the appropriate website updates that like keep my platform relevant to what I'm doing at present are things that are tough for me, because I like to just create things. and so that kind of transitions to the next question of, how do we be as excited about the business side of things as we are the creative, artistic side of our art practice, or whatever it is that we're providing for people? How do we get excited about the business part?
Yeah. Two things on that. One was still kind of coupling from that last question to something that I didn't say was like, and what we already talked about was like that network of people.
Yeah.
If you can like partner with other people who are able to do those other aspects. So like probably a lot of people who are artists, they're very creative. Potentially, maybe they're more, they like doing different aspects. But if you can find other people who can help you with those systems, just like you talked about that person, that artist who found a salesperson who could then like, they could stay in their creative zone. That's one way, but so your question specifically on this one, I just wanted to like touch that base on the last question, was about how
I'm glad you did.
but how like we can be as interested in the business aspect.
Yeah.
What game? I think it's all about like defining what game we're playing, and like the parameters, like what makes a win for us. Do we win if we successfully create our artwork? And like, if so, awesome, like you won, congratulations. But like the more that we can I think like zoom out and understand like the big picture of like, oh wait, how does this play into that goal that I set for myself 10 years from now, or 50 years from now, whatever game we're playing. Because I don't think there's any wrong way to do it. We could be just playing the day by day and like, hey, I had fun today, I won. Or I took one step towards that goal that I have set for myself for 50 years from now. Like for me, it's to be like financially independent. So if I'm taking steps towards learning something, developing the business side of things, that is where I consider my wins happening. I'm like, hey, I am developing what I need to be able to win my game. So I'd say that's probably like the most important aspect, is like understanding what we're working for. And if the business side of things are going to help that, then we can like wire ourselves to understand that and say like, oh, I'm winning when I'm doing those business things, versus like we might, it's about understanding how we're wiring ourselves. Like, are we going to be telling ourselves a story that, oh, business things suck and it's tough and it's difficult? Then you might not be understanding like what your end game, like what your end result is, and just like how to actually like play with your neurology, like your neurochemicals and your wiring to say like, wait, no, this is awesome, this is taking me towards the life that I want. So it's, even if it's, there's some challenge to it, it can be exactly what we need. So
that's so important what you just said, having a big picture idea of things. Something I did just last night actually was I wrote out a list of wins, of good things that are possible to happen, and it's on the board next to me. One of them is selling an NFT. That would be a huge win for me. Getting 100,000 views on a video, I would lay an egg. I'd be so excited. That's a huge win. And selling canvas prints of my artwork too, which are my highest ticket item, and I think they're absolutely some of my finest works. That's also a huge win. And I wrote those down because I've been really diving into the logistics of my business recently and understanding exactly what I'm doing, or what I'm doing it for. What's the point of me spending all this time and energy on this is because I'm going to sell a canvas, or because I'm going to sell an NFT, or because I'm going to get more patrons for my Patreon, which I haven't even promoted yet. But having an idea of what it is exactly that we're working towards and how we're doing that's so good. And I'm really glad that you brought that up. And it also kind of comes back to the network, because we can't do it alone. Everything that all of our business endeavors, they are going to function better when we have a team around us, or at least friends who are just giving support and feedback towards what we're doing. Having that network is really essential towards having that growth. And I'm happy to have friends like you that I can kind of bounce these business ideas back and forth with, because the creative process is what I'm just fully obsessed with. The marketing and the actual structures and systems that I do are things that they kind of feel a bit like chores, but I really love that you mentioned the big picture aspect of it, such that it gives us a clearer idea of what it is exactly that we're working for, and that in and of itself is very, very important.
One caveat that I feel called to speak to about that is just to choose carefully and to understand who it is that you're talking to, because I don't think all networks are created equal. Tai Lopez, some people kind of get triggered around him because he's an internet I don't know how to
Here in my
personality.
garage.
Yeah. Which, hey, I mean, he's done his thing. But something that I picked up from him, because I started listening to him like 7 or 8 years ago, was he calls it the rule of 33%. And just like what I was talking about with like the, seeing things through to completion, like I didn't have to like study everything of Tai Lopez. Like I found something that was like useful to me that I took from, that education, and was like, oh, sweet, that's applicable in my life. Like I don't have to accept all of him or, whatever. But the rule of 33 is that spending 33% of your time from people who are like beyond where you're trying to be. They're the successful artists, influencers, people that are your role models, spending 33% of your time like learning from them and gaining that new insight, 33% of your time with people of your peers, people that you're actively going through with, and then 33% of your time with people who that you can be impacting and helping, that are still trying to, get to your level. Because if you're sharing those ideas and you think that you're getting as valuable of insight as somebody who's made it, but you're sharing it with people who are trying, they haven't had that success, they're trying to get to, maybe where you're at, but you're expecting the feedback to be like people who have made it, and you're taking it at that level. Like you got to know who you're talking with, and what kind of value you can associate the feedback and the ideas with. Not that anybody couldn't have valuable feedback, but it's just like to be aware of that like there's different categories of insight and value of sharing those ideas with, and teamwork as well. Like when you're partnering with other people, like just because you have a team doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Like you got to know how to work with people, and if there are people who are going to be dragging you down and making things more difficult for you, then that's not any more valuable than just like shutting in and doing it yourself. You just have to know like the quality of people that you're really connecting with. I think, as best as to just be aware of that.
Absolutely. What's your opinion on Tai Lopez?
I think he's awesome. I don't know like a lot about him. I've only just heard some people who are like, I've heard some people who are skeptical, but I've taken a number of programs with him, and I think I've gotten a lot of insight, like his 67 steps to the good life. And I did a social media marketing course, which it was hardly any of him. It was a lot of other people. Those are like the two main programs that I've gone and spent any time with through him. So I've really only heard him doing his 67 steps, which is like how do people bash him? He's just like talking about the books that he's read, and like this is good quality content. So I don't know where he gets his questionable rap from. I've appreciated any of the information that I've got from him.
I think his questionable reputation is also part of like why he's had so much success, because that Here in My Garage video, that one, it was just memed and made fun of so much, and it was seen so much on YouTube that it just became like a weird running joke, almost like an infomercial for like self-help success, so to speak. That like people didn't really even know like who he was, but they still knew him, and that's a good thing. No matter what, being known and getting out of obscurity is, I think, something that all of us are when we're pushing our own practice from the laboratory into the physical internet realm, the virtual realm, or into the physical, just taking our artwork or our media production or our coaching into the world where it's applicable. People have to know us, and they have to be able to find that information on us, and having a reputation, even if it's for something like a very strange YouTube video, is is important, and I personally really admire that about Tai Lopez, is that he's kind of shameless in his own promotion. He does get a questionable rap, but I think it was on Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu that I saw him, or that I listened to a podcast with him, and it was really insightful. It was very, very useful. There was a lot of really, really good information in there that I truly, honestly learned something, which is why I asked, because he does have like a questionable reputation. He does, kind of the thing of like showing the super nice cars and the hot girls on his YouTube advertisements and content, and it kind of just sells this lifestyle. And I think that for some people, that creates kind of a unrealistic expectation that by taking his courses and by buying his products that we are going to be, washing our Lamborghini with our 10 super hot supermodel girlfriends. And it doesn't really show the actual grind and the really challenging parts of the hustle. And to me, that's why I think he has kind of an odd reputation, because it is sort of it does create that unrealistic expectation, but he does genuinely have a lot of really good information and knowledge to share. And I'm really happy that you've gotten a lot out of that, because it's kind of inspiring me to look into more of his content. I'm kind of against spending $1,000 on a course, unless I like really know that it's going to work. And that's one of his primary offers, I know, but he what he does is definitely super inspiring. And the shameless aspect of what he does, I think that makes a lot of us personally uncomfortable, because so many of us deal with imposter syndrome, that we can't possibly put ourselves out there to teach other people anything or share any valuable information, because we feel that we in ourselves are just not ready to share that, or that we're not good enough to share that. Do you ever experience imposter syndrome?
Yeah, totally. I'm still trying to overcome it myself, in terms of like, I'm not putting out content that's like, I know how to make people money, even though like I've studied a lot of people who and have learned a lot from people who have the education to pass along through me, and I could just as easily package it up in a new way and tout it back out. But because I don't I haven't put in the system, the model, like the practices into practice so much myself, and it's still theoretical for me for the most part. I don't go about trying to tout out that I can make you a millionaire, even though like some of what I know very well, like somebody could take that information, because it's not like just my information. It's information that I've taken and learned from a lot of other successful people, and success not just being about like financial success. We define the rules of our game, like what makes success for us. So like people can take that kind of information and do with it what they will. But yeah, I definitely am all too aware of the imposter syndrome.
Right, and it kind of holds us back from sharing information that could genuinely be really helpful to other people. Mm-hmm. It's part of why I started the Visionary Art podcast with just having guests in mind, because anytime that I try and do a solo show, and I've tried to do a couple solo shows, it just doesn't feel like there's it doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like I'm just talking at the computer, and it's always weird to think that there are potentially millions of people on the other side of this podcast listening. No pressure or anything. And I think that kind of freaks people out. What kind of practices have you found useful towards getting over those inner voices that are telling us that we're not good enough? Is there any particular tricks or techniques that you've learned to mentally and also emotionally put us in a position where we can share things that are genuinely going to help people?
Spank yourself.
Spank yourself?
Spank yourself. No. I think one of the it was truly pivotal in my mindset about is about selling, and I learned this from from an Ever Coach, who's a sister company to Mind Valley. If you've ever heard of that company, who I'm a huge fan of, and the talk was called "Selling is Love," and the takeaway is that if you have something that is going to help somebody, it actually becomes, because I think a big thing that comes along with the imposter syndrome and like how do I put out this content and share things and like, oh, woe is me, is like that's like a very egotistical place of like worrying what other people will think, and it's not a place of service. Where if we are aware that there is something that resides within us that might be of benefit to somebody else, whether it's an artwork, whether it's a piece of knowledge, and we hold that back, we're doing a disservice to these other people. And to couple along with like the offering, so there's like selling is love, like putting your offer out to the world is an act of service, because if you have something that can help somebody, then there's no reason not to. Now if you're selling some junk crap that's going to break, or that's not a benefit to them, then like there's a good reason to not want to promote it. But something else that has been really beneficial to me about putting like a price to things is about what people invest, time, energy, money. When giving out free content, people will take that with a certain level of value. They value it to a certain degree. And I say to each their own, but like when you talk about like the Tai Lopez courses, which by the way, I got 10 of his courses for $200, which I thought was a pretty awesome deal.
Ooh.
Not $1,000. And that was like the first time that I invested. And I've now since invested like much more in different kinds of courses that really, to me, it is an investment. And just like to what, if I ever put out an offer, I'll expect is that there's an exchange. There is a certain level of value that if one is willing to step up to that plate, to play at that level, that like you can go find stuff on YouTube, and like that's a certain level of investment of your time and trying to sort it. But if somebody takes the time and energy to craft it into say like an organized package, and like there's a reason that there's like a price that goes along with it. There's a certain level of like emotional, mental engagement that will be pulled out of somebody when they actually invest into it. They invest the money, the time. I think the money is a big one, because like we're literally like we're saying like, which is kind of like a representation of time sometimes. But it's like, I value this enough to like sacrifice part of myself to put into this. And it creates this whole different level of engagement. Like here's an example. I took a course, it's called Lifebook, and they did a really fun model where you pay up front for the course. It's $500, but if you complete it, they give you a full refund. And the numbers that they showed was that most courses that people take, there's like a low 20% completion rate. Even if people pay for it, people they're like, oh, okay, like they'll take part, and then something happens and they're not fully engaged. But they charged a high price up front, got people really invested and engaged, and they had like 80+% completion rates for people going through the course, because it was like, hey, you're gonna get your money back as well if you complete. So I thought that was a really cool incentivization model.
That's such a cool idea. I've never heard of any courses that really do that. And
Mm-hmm.
like you were saying, like when we purchase something, I think we kind of have this expectation that we're going to have like something palpable by the end of it. some kind of like physical object or event that's going to transpire after we invest that money into it. And I think what you were saying about, we can always just like find videos on YouTube or find various books that have all this information. I think when it's for something really specific, because let's be real, there's a lot of different opportunities that exist here in the world today. There's a lot. It's overwhelming. And having that information for something really specific, such as in my example, selling digital art, selling NFT art. Let's get really specific. Selling digital art as NFTs. That's a really specific niche, and I'm actually surprised that I haven't seen any like NFT masterclasses appear yet, because it is such an interesting and new market that I don't think anyone has really tapped into that. I hope no one does, because I'm actually working on a fake NFT masterclass. It's totally fake. It's 100% fake. It's normally an $87 million value, but I'm giving it away for 97 cents. Anyway, the investment that we make, like I like how you said we're giving part of ourselves to this thing when we make that investment, and having all that information clearly articulated and put in front of us, and then also to give us a clear program and specific actions that we can take. Those are a little bit tougher to find or extract from books or YouTube videos. So I like that you said that, making that investment is what's going to really drive us to take action in those specific things. And back to what you're saying about selling is love, like sharing that is, I wanted to clap when I heard that, because that's just such a good perspective, that not sharing this knowledge is actually selfish. like that makes me feel more guilty about being lazy, which is something that I struggle with from time to time. Okay, a lot. And knowing that I'm actually giving more to the world if I'm just giving my knowledge out there for free in a way that makes sense is really encouraging. It's definitely very what's the word I'm looking for? It's motivating for sure. A lot of the time when I get imposter syndrome and it's like bad, it's usually because I have an idea for a video or something, and I just choose to like not make that video, even if I think it's a really good idea for a video. I'll just choose not to make it because it somehow feels easier to like stay in that comfort zone of like stuff I'm familiar with versus putting myself out there onto the internet to say something that I think is going to be useful for someone. It's something I think all of us certainly struggle with. And the more that we give ourselves that permission to give what we know and to express and articulate what we're good at, then the easier that it gets, is what I've found in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, why is it that giving ourselves permission to do things can be really challenging? Like, does it just tie into imposter syndrome, or have you thought about various ways that we can overcome that?
What was it?
I guess that kind of ties into imposter syndrome of just giving ourselves permission to really do things, and I think that sort of ties into like the mindset that we have as we're going about this. What kind of things have you learned about mindset when it comes to creating and generating a business that's really helping people? Like what's that mindset of someone look like?
Trying to think if there's anything that I haven't already said that would be benefit. I don't know if there's anything that I haven't already said about mindset on that in particular.
Yeah. When we ran into each other in the park, we were talking about how about like the emotional aspect of like driving ourselves, which is why I wanted to start this off with the dedication versus motivation discussion, because I think that's really important for us to have in mind as we're creating content or material or art. And like it's tough to sell ourselves, at least at first, if we're not used to selling ourselves. Like, I've been working as a professional artist for the greater part of the last half decade, and it's still always weird for me to ask for money for my productions, even though like I fully know what my time and my energy and my skills are worth. I have a very clear idea of that and spent a lot of time questioning myself in that regards. So I'm wondering if you have any specific insights and just general information on like how people can kind of get over that emotional blockage of asking for money for our creative work.
Potentially one thing I could see is investing yourself. Is it something that you could see, like, that you either already have invested for yourself? Like, if for example, for me, like if I'm going to make a course, I've invested $5,000 in a course, so I can feel comfortable like knowing what it is that, and I did, I found the value in that. So like I can turn around now and say like, hey, I understand. Like before that, like it was like, what? Like pay, when I first like got started and I'd like pay $200 for a course. I'm like, a lot of money to be spending on something. Like better be worth my time. And then to understand like what can shift in the ways of thinking and like the potential outcomes that can happen from it. I think if we understand the value ourselves and are willing to make that investment ourselves, it like physiologically changes something where we like truly embody and know what the value of it is, versus like just trying to like hype up something and be like, this is worth $87 million. When if like we ourselves aren't willing to actually like to realistically value it at that, maybe people get by with that. I've heard people who are just like, probably sell things for outrageous sums of money that I don't know if they actually believe that it's worth that or not. I don't know that I actually have any specific examples for that, but that's one thing I can think. The other is maybe just try it. Just see if somebody see it. Like I think getting past the fear of rejection could be a big hurdle that people consider not doing something. Like that could be their reason for not doing something, is like, oh, if they say no, there's something wrong with me, or I'll die. Like, we have these tribal fears of just like you putting out content onto the internet. Like apparently like the fear of public speaking is like more fear than death or something. I've heard there's some study that was done about that, and it's like that idea, and it's I think it's based off of the when we lived in tribes. If like you're excommunicated from a tribe, like you're gonna die. Like you're not going to be able to survive on your own. So I think the concept that gets tied in is like when we offer something, I think there's a fear that like if somebody says no, they're saying no to me, and that means that I'm not a welcome anymore and I'm going to die. So I think if we can prove to ourselves, if we if you can't, I think it would have to be like not trying to meet that like foundational survival mode again. Like if you're trying to sell that painting so that you can have food on your table, you're probably approaching it in a certain way where you're not in this like, I can experiment with charging whatever I want and like take a no and that'll be okay. You might like, your body might be saying like, this cell equals me having food on the table. So there's a different way that might be approached. But if you're not trying to achieve that survival mode, then I'd say like treat it like a game and just know that there's going to be wins and losses, and that there's nothing wrong with the individual for winning and losing. That's just part of the game.
Something my other successful artist friends will say is to just highball pretty much every price. Anytime they get an offer for a commission, just give the highest possible price. And if they say no and then vanish or just vanish, then it wasn't meant to happen anyway. And if they say like, oh, that's a little expensive, like here's what I can actually spend, then that kind of gives a parameter for what the maximum amount that this is like worth to the other person is, and then we can use our own discretion to kind of decide whether that's something that will work for us or not. And you never know when you're going to get a yes on something like that. And I like that you brought up like, me selling this painting means getting food on my table. I think that's such an important thing to consider, because oftentimes if we're in that survival mode of desperateness of like, I'm literally hungry, then we can end up making decisions that are actually like not in our best interest. So I think that also kind of ties into the big picture aspect and having a grander vision of what exactly it is that we're giving and providing for the world. That having a clear vision and understanding of who we are in the grand scheme of things and what role we're playing, having that visualization that's really locked into our mind can help us through those situations of pricing ourselves, as well as just making day-to-day decisions that are in line with this future version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Timothy, what is some advice that you wish you knew when you started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Probably fail forward.
Fail forward?
Yeah.
Like, just don't be afraid to fail?
Yeah. More so like embrace it and just like go through that. Like I'm talking with business owners right now about like buying businesses, and that's like totally like talk to me like a month ago and I wouldn't have really even been taking that seriously. But I'm having those conversations, I'm making the mistakes and just embracing it and just knowing like that is totally part of my journey. Like I'm not supposed to have it all figured out right now. That's what I'm doing. So I'd say that just more and more, the more that I can embrace that, just the easier the process becomes, I think.
I think that aspect also gives us some thicker skin towards those kinds of events, because we're always going to face failure. Not everything we do is going to be a massive raging success, and I think that fear of failure and fear of rejection ends up holding us back quite a bit, quite substantially, and it can be a very subtle, like subconscious kind of failure that we're afraid of, and it'll prevent us from taking actions on things that we're really truly passionate about. So I really love that. That's what you brought up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. We're coming up at just over an hour now on this show. Timothy, where can our viewers find you?
Probably the best one right now is Facebook. My profile page, if you look, it's called Bridge the New, or if you do the URL, it's www.facebook.com/new.earth.entrepreneur. And there's also a group that you can find a link there, but the group is New Earth Entrepreneurs. And that's a collective where I'm trying to host the container for entrepreneurs, people who are interested in being their own business owners, or even working with other people, developing their skill sets and just sharing in conversation. That's probably the best place to find me right now.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I see you sharing a lot of really useful content in that group, and I'm about to start leveling up the number of times that I'm posting in there because I'm coming up with questions all the time that are very similar to a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. And I really appreciate the stuff that you share there. That's helpful for creative people like me, figuring out how to kind of structure and figure out like what it is that I'm providing in the best possible way. And back to the big picture discussion, having that clarity is by far one of the most important things that we can have, no matter what our endeavor that we're on is.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to our viewers?
Man, I just hope people keep going, and I love that if anybody wants to join up so that we can talk about this further. We can talk about whatever journey you're on individually, and we can just all help each other have more fun and be of more service.
Brilliant. And all those links are going to be down there in the description. To all the viewers, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Always.